will is the governing power in the nature of man, bringing all other faculties under its sway. It is through the nerve that the order of the will are to communicate with the various parts of the body, and they are arbitrarily carried out. Listen to this carefully. Whatever hinders the circulation of the electric current in the nervous system, thus weakening the vital power and lessening mental susceptibility, makes it more difficult to arouse the moral nature. This comes from Education, page 209 and 289. I find it a very fascinating quote because if you remember the mind, the way the mind works with the will in the center, the will is the governing power in the nature of man, other faculties under its sway. So if you permit me again, I will take the mind again and we're going to look at it. You see that the will combined with the faith is the one that allows you to use your intellect, conscience, and reason to govern your appetite and desires. So the will is the governing power in the nature of man, bringing all other faculty under its sway. And through the nerves of the five senses, we're told here, this is through the nerve that the orders of the will are communicated with the various parts of the body, and they are arbitrarily carried out. Isn't that fascinating? So whatever hinders the circulation of the electric current in the nervous system, thus weakening the vital powers and lessening mental susceptibility, makes it more difficult to arouse the moral nature. So remember the combination. You cannot separate the body from the brain and from the mind. They all function together in harmony. When you're healthy and you're functioning well and you're not depressed and you're not on medication and your mind is clear and thinks sanely, that's when the Holy Spirit can really contact you and giving you instruction from above. But there is another as well that knows how to do it, and I will explain that to you in a few minutes. So basically, please keep in mind that your brain nerve, only 12 pairs, millions and millions of brain cells, but only 12 pairs. 12 on one side, 12 on the other side, so that's 24 brain nerves, 31 pair of body nerves, 31 on one side, 31 on the other side, so that makes it 86. So that's the only nerve we have, and we need to protect them. And interestingly, that this quote talks about the electrical current. You know, this is a very, very new finding in science that we do have electrical current and it can be calculated. Yet we have here a prophet that talks about the electric current in the 1800, 1900 area, and it's very advanced knowledge because in her days people did not know that they were made of electrical current. So here we have the purpose of this research is to prove that the brain nerves are under attack, doomed to destruction. So this is part number 4 of series number 2, and for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 session, this is what we're going to look at. The next 4 parts we will be studying the brain nerves. And God intends to reestablish, to restore those brain nerves, of course, with our collaboration, our obedience to the 8 laws of health, using natural remedy only, eating good food that is good for the blood, and we know the brain requires a lot of blood in the stomach. So this is a combination where you can see the body and the mind and the brain comes together. So the designer of the human brain and its 24 nerves as a special way of communicating with man at his creation. That's what he had as a way. But when man chose to serve another master, this communication system was sabotaged by the enemy. But the chemist of the mind offers a plan to restore the communication to the brain nerve and still fulfill its glorious purpose in the education of the human race. Now, we're going to look at 3 important major aspects here to establish this important plan. Do you know why you were created? And how was your maker communicating with you? What were the consequences of the separation of man from his maker in Genesis 3? And what is the Creator's plan to restore us? So this is how we're going to do it. We're going to be studying it from a biblical point of view. We're using the spirit of prophecy, of course, and we're going to be using anatomy, physiology, and pathology, because we know there is sickness in the camp, there is sin in the camp, and the Lord intends to clean that up. This is how it's going to be researched. And as we look here at the book of education, I believe that quote is very powerful. We should know it too. In order to understand what is comprehended in the work of education, we need to consider both the nature of man and the purpose of God in creating him. We need to consider also the change in man's condition to the coming in of a knowledge of evil, and God's plan for still fulfilling his glorious purpose in the education of the human race. Isn't that a beautiful quote? So the Lord does not give up on us. Don't ever think, anybody that is listening to this, that God has given up on you. He does not give up on any of his children, because it is his goal and his purpose that every man should be saved. Not every man will choose to be saved, but that is his purpose. So here we're going to be studying the 7 reasons why man was created. We're going to be studying 5 consequences of man's separation from his maker, 7 solutions to renew the connection, and when are we fully like Jesus. So this I will be covering as we go along in the next parts. So first we're going to start with the 7 reasons why man was created. By the way, this is all on the CD having to do with the website Numbers 1317. And you can find it under, it's called Brain Nerves, and it's a brain nerve research, the best electrical system. So man, what was the reason why we were created? Listen to this. Man was to resemble God in character, and we know that from Genesis 1:26. Man was to be sovereign of the earth. Did he not give us dominion? Man's character was to be developed to the exercise of choice. Man's will was to govern his body to the brain nerves. Man's mind was designed with 2 distinct centers, so we have seen that already. Man's was to communicate with God through the higher center of the mind. Man was to be a living temple. So, as we have looked already at those instructions, we know for sure that God had a beautiful plan for us. It was not a plan for evil, it was a plan for good. And even though we have been disobedient and rebellious through our first parents, and we continue to this day, the Heavenly Father still have in mind that man, which was the crowning act of the creation of God, made in the image of God, was to be designed to be a counterpart of God. So man was created a superior being. He alone is formed in the image of God and is capable of partaking of the divine nature, of cooperating with his Creator and executing his plans. This is marvelous, isn't it? I'm reading from the Spirit of Prophecy here. I'm not going to give you every quote. You can find them on the DVD or on the website. Listen to this. Man was to bear God's image both in outward resemblance and in character. Man was formed in the likeness of God. His nature was in harmony with the will of God. His mind was capable of comprehending divine things. His affections were pure. His appetite and passion were under the control of reason. He was holy and happy in bearing the image of God and in perfect obedience to his will. This is Patriarch and Prophet, page 45. I'm taking all my quotes from very easy books to get in every languages. And there is no excuse, because there is definitely books like in French, we don't have all the books. In Japanese, they don't have all the book of the Spirit of Prophecy translated. So I've only chosen books that are easily available in all languages. So here it is. Before the entrance of sin, not a cloud rested upon the mind of our first parents to obscure their perception of the character of God. They were perfectly conformed to the will of God. For a covering, a beautiful light, the light of God surrounded them. This clear and perfect light illuminated everything which they approached. We do not have that experience anymore. Soon the Lord will give us that experience, but we do not have it. And as we know, God placed Adam and Eve as God's representative over the lower order of beings. They cannot understand or acknowledge the sovereignty of God, yet they were made capable of loving and serving man. So that's why we believe that the Lord will someday again make man having dominion over the earth and care for the earth properly. You know, the Bible says that he will punish those who pollute the earth. So we don't have to be no new age to want to protect the earth and care for the creation of God. We can be Christian and should be protecting, be good steward for the earth. So this was the first and second reason. The third reason, which had to do with the exercise of choices, and I have scripture and spirit of prophecy always here. Angels on probation had been deceived by Satan and had been led on by him to the great rebellion in heaven against Christ. They failed to bear the test brought to bear upon them, and they fell. Adam was then created in the image of God and placed upon probation. He had a perfectly developed organism, all his faculties harmonized. In all of his emotion, words, and action, there was a perfect conformity to the will of his Maker. After God had made every provision for the happiness of man and had supplied his every want, he tested Adam's loyalty. If the holy pair should be obedient, the race would, after a time, be made equal to the angels. We're also told that we were created to replace the fallen angel. So basically, we know that the enemy of soul doesn't want us to come to be like Jesus and basically represent the Heavenly Father's character for that very reason. God might have created them without the power to transgress his requirement, but in that case, there could have been no development of character. Their servitude would have been forced. Therefore, he gave them the power of choice, the power to yield or to withhold obedience. This is in the Book of Education, page 23. God placed man under law as an indispensable condition of his very existence. He was a subject of the divine government, and there can be no government without law. So basically, when you listen to these quotes, and I read them often, these are not mine, they're from the Spirit of Prophecy and the Bible, and it just uplifts me. That's why when people believe Adam and Eve were created immortal, in Patriarch and Prophet, the prophet makes it very clear they were not created immortal. They were created upon condition of obedience. They would become immortal. Because if they had been created immortal, they would have been immortal sinners. So it was upon condition of obedience. Now, man's will was to govern his body to the brain nerves, and this is very important. All the physical organs are the servants of the mind, and the nerves are the messenger that transmit his order to every part of the body, guiding the motion of the living machinery. This is taken from Fundamental of Christian Education, page 426. The will is the governing power in the nature of man, bringing all other faculties under its sway. Every child should understand the true force of the will, the power of decision or choice. This goes between, I talked about that in the Book of Education very often. I use the Book of Education because there is so much instruction for parents and children. Listen to this. The influence of the mind on the body, as well as the body on the mind, should be emphasized. The electrical power, I love when she talks about electricity. The electric power of the brain, promoted by mental activity, vitalizes the whole system and is thus an invaluable aid in resisting disease. This should be made plain. The power of the will and the importance of self-control, both in the preservation and in the recovery of health, the depressing and even ruinous effect of anger, discontent, selfishness, and impurity, and on the other hand, the marvelous life-giving power to be found in cheerfulness, unselfishness, gratitude should also be shown. So these are basically just advice. They're beautiful counsel, isn't it? This one is very impressive. Testimony, volume 3, page 69 and 70. She says, there are many invalids today who would ever remain so because they cannot be convinced that their experience is not reliable. The brain is the capital of the body, the seat of all the nervous forces and mental action. The nerve proceeding from the brain control the body. You know, I've had people in my class who told me that when Sister White talks about those nerves, it's not the brain nerves she's talking about. She's talking about spiritual things. I don't believe so. The prophet was very much physical, spiritual. She knew the value of the body with the mind. And these are the brain nerves she's talking about. The 12 pairs of the brain nerve. I'm going to read it again. The nerve proceeding from the brain control the body. By the brain nerves, mental impressions are conveyed to all the nerves of the body. So we have 62 body nerves, or 31 pair, and she says that this is conveyed as by telegraph wires. Today you could say cell phone or whatever, but she's using telegraph, and they control the vital action of every part of the system. You see? All the organs of motions are governed by the communication they receive from the brain. This is where I've learned this. I have not learned that at college or university. I do not believe that they teach that even to this day. These instructions are directly from heaven. Now, if your mind is impressed and fixed that a bath will injure you, the mental impression is communicated to all the nerves of the body. The nerve controls the circulation of the blood. Therefore, the blood is, through the impression of the mind, confined to the blood vessels, and the good effect of the bath are lost. All this is because the blood is prevented by the mind and will from flowing readily. You are impressed that if you bathe, you will become chilly. The brain sends its intelligence to the nerve of the body, and the blood vessel, held in obedience to your will, cannot perform their office and causes a reaction after the bath. If we could just teach that, I know the people would understand what is happening. Why are they like they are? There's another, these quotes, by the way, they're from the Testimony, Volume 3, page 69 and 70. And here there is a quote that I really like. The book of Genesis gives quite a definite account of social and individual life. And yet, we have no record of an infant being born blind, deaf, crippled, deformed, or imbecile. There is not one instance upon record of a natural death in infancy, childhood, or early manhood. There is no account of men and women dying of disease. Obituary notices in the book of Genesis run thus: and all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. And all the days of Seth were 912 years, and he died. Concerning others, the record states, he lived to a good old age, and he died. It was so rare for a son to die before the father that such an occurrence was considered worthy of record. And Aaron died before his father Terah. Aaron was a father of children before his death. And now, this is another quote that I find so fascinating, and I know that the world does not know this. This is from Testimony, Volume 3, by the way, page 138-39. God endowed man with so great vital force that he has withstood the accumulation of disease brought upon the race in consequences of perverted habits, and has continued for 6,000 years. This fact of itself is enough to evidence to us the energy that God gave to man at his creation. It took more than 2,000 years of crime and indulgence of base passion to bring bodily disease upon the race to any great extent. Listen to this. This is very vital as far as a quote. If Adam at his creation had not been endowed with 20 times as much vital force as man now has, the race with their present habits of living in violation of natural law would have become extinct. And I do a study in the second part of the brain nerves, which we will see in part number 5 actually of this series. This is very fascinating. Man was created with 20 times more vital force than we have now of electrical power. And now I told you in my book of Anatomy and Physiology, they can calculate now the power of the body, and it's through the muscles and the nerves, the tissue of the muscles and the nerve, and they can calculate the amount of voltage that passes through. And it's true, it's very amazing when you calculate it from that 20 times more, you'll see how weak and feeble we are. That's why we're so tiny. The brain nerves that connects with the whole system are the medium to which heaven communicates with man and affect the inmost life. And whatever hinders the circulation of the electric currents in the nervous system, thus weakening the vital powers and lessening mental susceptibility, makes it more difficult to arouse the moral nature. I have repeated those because I believe they need to be in our mind.